Welcome here, and what I aim to present you is why diversity is important in sustainability. You would expect, or you expect that maybe I talk about biodiversity, right? Because I came from the Faculty of Sustainability. But otherwise, I'm going to change the entry point, because this is my topic, and also because I think it's more important to talk about values of people rather than why it's important the number of species and the biodiversity. Why that? Conservation of biodiversity is not only about species and ecosystems, but it's mostly about value systems of people and how these value systems underpin our human behavior. Depend on our human behavior, we will have more environmental attitudes, or we will be able to take actions towards sustainability, right? So this is why the topic is about value pluralism, so basically diversity of values. Yep. It's working? Yeah. In biodiversity conservation, it has been different arguments and different stages from the academia perspective, but also from the practitioner's perspective. In the 60s, it emerged the awareness for conserving nature and for conserving biodiversity. So we're here, yeah. And in this first stage, practitioners and scholars, researchers, aims to conserve biodiversity because species, ecosystems, and habitats have a value in itself. We have the moral principle to conserve biodiversity because biodiversity, either species or ecosystems, have the right to exist. So basically the idea is to protect nature because nature has a value in itself, regardless how can benefit to society, how we can get any profit from nature, yeah? So this was the first decade of conserving biodiversity. Then we switched somehow towards the idea that biodiversity is not only important by itself, but also we should protect it against all the actions from humans. So the focus wasn't anymore species, protected areas, or habitats, but rather all the drivers of change that are fostered, promoted by society, human society. And here the topics start to be habitat loss, overexploitation, pollution, even climate change. But you see that in these two perspectives, in the starting point of conservation, we frame that society are not part of biodiversity. We should protect species, we should protect habitats, because humans are impacting on nature. But we allocate ourselves as humans apart from nature. We are not connected with nature. This was the starting point of the field, the discipline of biodiversity conservation. What happened later? We realized that with these two arguments, we were totally unable to protect nature. Actually, if you follow the discussions in the newspapers and journals, you see that we are in what we call the sixth extinction, massive extinction, and the rates of disappearance or loss of biodiversity in species is still increasing. So in the 21st century, a new bunch of scholars and practitioners, among them, this was my PhD and this was my first research, we start to work with the idea that we get benefits from nature. So we should not only protect nature because nature has value in itself, because the moral principle of protect nature, but also because we get benefits from nature. And these benefits are called ecosystem services. If you see how you are dressed today here, how all we are dressed, you realize that we are made by nature. Cotton, right? If you analyze what you have had today for lunch, you also realize that you eat diversity, biodiversity, vegetables, meat, right? If you are breathing right now, you also realize that you depend on nature because the quality of the air is not because you, it's because the trees and the forest. Yeah? Same with water quality. But also, nature is important for our cultural identity. Many knowledge we get comes from nature. You most likely feel more comfortable in some ecosystems than others, right? You would feel the identity, your identity sometimes in forest, sometimes in wetlands. It's up to you. But you get some cultural footprint from nature. And actually, not for us, but for many indigenous people and communities, there are natural sacred places. And they cannot distinguish their religion from nature. They are inherently rooted in nature, even spiritually, right? So we get benefits from nature in terms of materials, like food, dress, medicines, also in terms of ecological functions like pollination, soil fertility, water quality, quality of air, but also in terms of non-material cultural benefits. Like, for instance, when you travel to one place because the aesthetic value of this forest, wetland, right? And this would happen in the first 5 years of the 21st century. But even with that, we realize that allocate ourselves as society that get benefits from nature is not fair enough, because humans are really engaged, embedded in the ecosystems, and ecosystems are shaped by our actions, and also nature shapes our behavior, our attitudes, right? So this is why we start to talk about human-nature systems or social ecological systems, in order to show that we cannot frame nature as part of people. People and nature are strongly linked. So what happened here is that we have 4 different arguments to conserve biodiversity that historically have co-evolved one after other. But all of them are useful, can be useful, right? And the idea here is to explore why, or which are the motives, the values that underpin these 4 stages of conservation. And also, it's important to highlight here that nowadays, what happened is that the 4 frames are alive in the discussions. Even their entry point or their starting point is quite different. So nowadays we have practitioners and scholars trying to push for their point of view. But the 4 point of views are alive in the discussions. None of them have been eclipsed the others. And also what is important here, and this is connected with your career, that each of them entails different knowledge systems. If we want to protect the species, we only need natural science, right? Ecology, zoology, botany. Botany? Well, something like that, plant science. But if we want to protect biodiversity because we are part of nature, then we need other sources of knowledge. And this means that we don't only need natural science, but also social science, humanities. But we don't stop there. We also need to understand why people conserve nature and how is the local knowledge and traditional knowledge of farmers, rural communities, or even indigenous communities, because they have other sources of knowledge, same worthy that scientific knowledge. So in this framing, we don't only take into account scientific knowledge, we also take into account local, indigenous, and traditional knowledge. But what happened in terms of values? Well, in the first two stages of the history of conservation biology, we talk about intrinsic values. This means that we value nature, as I mentioned before, because nature has the right to exist. It's a moral principle. It's about ethics. And here, the idea is that we value nature, right? These are the intrinsic values. And some people frame it as the right of exist of different species, habitats, ecosystems. But afterwards, when we move towards the next stage, and also why we move towards the next stage, it was because decision makers asked for other arguments. They said to researchers, okay, this is fine, we should conserve nature, right? But how I include it in my equation of cost-benefit analysis? Yeah. How can I take a decision? Because I have to take decisions which project is better than the others. And this is in terms of money, in terms of monetary values. And with this abstract idea about ethics and the right moral principle and right to exist of biodiversity, we cannot put this in an equation in a way that I take a decision. So this is why we move towards ecosystem services and instrumental values. So this means all the benefits we get from nature to our well-being. And basically here what happened is that we start to do economic valuation of nature, which means that we put monetary values, price, to food. This is easy because still food are in markets, but also to the air we breathe, to the water we drink, and also even to sacred natural sites. So we want to put values, monetary values, to everything coming from nature in order to add this into the equation. But what happened here is that the two movements start to fight, one against other. Ethics and natural scientists says, we need to conserve nature because nature has a value in itself. An economist said, no, we need to conserve nature because we get profit from it. And decision makers start to use this argument. What happened there is that in 2016, which means this year, we start to think that this fighting is totally useless. And also because we are ignoring one of the most important values. These are what is called relational values. What is relational values? Give the importance to the relation, to the human-nature relation, or give the importance to human-human relations that are embedded in nature. Let me to explain with an example, because I see some boring faces, so this example can awake you. Do you have boyfriend or girlfriend? Yeah, right? None of you. Well, but you have friends, right? Yeah, you have. So, why value this your friendship? Do you value it because your friend has the right to assist? No, right? No. Do you value it because you get profit from them? Sometimes I see your faces. But actually, you value it because you put the emphasis, you want to take care of the relation. The important thing is the relation and how this relation shapes your behavior, makes you better people, right? The important thing is when you are in a relationship to take care of this relationship because these relations makes you feel better, right? This is relational values with nature too. And it might happen in terms of individuals with nature. So I feel better in this ecosystem because this place is important to me, to who I am as a person. But also it might happen that nature is the matrix where social relations are happening, and therefore social relations increase or social relations take shape because nature. And here, what is important is that nature provides a tool for me to connect with other people. So there are many types of relational values: local identity, sacred places, spiritual values, social relationships, social responsibility. I'm going to give you 3 examples. First one, this is my hand. And my hand holds a small water bird. Yeah? This water bird was alone without its parents. So I found it and I took it, just like an instinct reaction. And in terms of what this action represents is basically relational values. Maybe I took it because I realized that this little water bird has the right to exist. But actually the reaction was more based on taking care of this little bird. And this reminds, when it happened, after reflection, reminds me the lecture of the Nobel Award Toni Morrison. In her lecture, when she got this Nobel Prize, she told about a story. The story is a girl who searched for, these people who try to forecast the destiny of the others, like clair-evident, something like that. So these people who try to forecast the destiny of others who was blind. And the girl searched for that person and asked her just to try if she can see or not. Can you see the bird in my hand? Yeah, I cannot see, but I can feel that you have a bird. Is this bird alive or dead? And the blind person didn't respond. And after repeat the same question all the time, is this bird alive or dead? The blind person answered, I don't know whether this bird is alive or dead. But what is important is in your hands. In your hands. What does it mean? Which means basically is that it's our responsibility to take care of species, of nature. And this responsibility of taking care relies on relational values. Another example, this comes from my country. I'm Spanish, by the way. And in Spain, as in other Mediterranean regions, there is a transhumance movement where shepherds move their cattle and livestock, their livestock from the north to the south in order to get better grasslands and pasture lands, because all this difference in terms of temperature and water availability, right? So transhumance movement is a tradition and a historical management way of livestock based on local knowledge. And here, what happened is that these shepherds do not do this movement because profit, because actually they get the same money that those shepherds and farmers who have their cattle and livestock in intensive farming, right? Why they do transhumance still after centuries of doing the same? They do because in the pathway, what they say based on Antonio Machado poems, we do the pathway because by walking one makes the way. And this way for the shepherds is to increase, to shape their relation with the livestock, but also with the other shepherds. They should trust each other. Imagine 30 days traveling from the north to the south without cars, without technology, just walking and walking. So why this is important? They take care of the animals, they take care of the other shepherds, and they shape their attitude, their worldview, their point of view through the landscape they walk through. I'm going to ignore this one because it's 2 minutes left. And basically, to sum up, we are all in the same boat, right? We are all in the same boat, which is this Earth planet. It doesn't matter if we have arguments for protect nature and the planet because the intrinsic value of nature, because the benefits we get from nature, or because we put the emphasis in the relation with nature and with others. It doesn't matter. We are all in the same world, so it's time to stop fighting who is right to conserve nature. We are all here, so embrace diversity of values. Embrace diversity of motivations for conserving nature. And this is basically my message. And this was the message that was published in 2014, a call for inclusive conservation, where more than 200 people, scientists, signed a call for embrace diversity, which ends that we call for a conservation ethic that is diverse in acceptance of culture, genders, age, but also knowledge systems and value systems. So celebrate diversity for conserving biodiversity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Martin-López from Sustainability. I guess we have time for 1 or 2 brief questions from the audience, if there are any.
Right. So you just said mankind can't live without nature because it's important for food and clothes and all the stuff. But do you think nature could survive without us people on Earth?
Yeah. They will survive. Nature will survive in other forms. Because if you see ecosystems, they are shaped by us. Grasslands, pasturelands. But if we disappear as a species, nature will evolve. Totally. In other forms. It happened before.
Okay.
So, if I understood this correctly, we value nature for the human interaction as a place where human interaction can take place. But isn't that kind of an instrumental value? So
this is a good question, a really good one, and maybe this question is why we struggle so long to come up with the idea of relational values. But I'm going to try to explain you the difference, right?
Okay.
Instrumental values is that we get benefit from nature.
Yeah.
Benefit, which means food, which means air quality. And this benefit contributes to our welfare, right?
Yeah.
But relational values is that I value nature not because I get benefit. It's because it's important to me, the relation with nature. So the focus is not the benefits I get from nature, the focus is the relation itself, right? Think about your boy-girlfriend, yeah, or your friends. It's important because the relation itself. Sometimes these boxes, and this is a good question also because these boxes are not, I don't like boxes. We need boxes for lectures, but the boundaries of value systems are very diluted, so you can jump in from one value to other easily because they are really connected. Also, relational values, it's high connected with the moral principle to conserve nature, which is intrinsic values. So don't think about boxes. Think that everything is connected, right?
Okay.